Captain Day 1 Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the stars drift past the viewport. 43 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Union. 43 years of proving themselves worthy. 43 years of holding back. The bridge crew worked quietly around him. Dr. Hannah Park sat at her station, reviewing files about the newest species humanity had encountered. She was one of Earth's best experts on alien cultures. Her job was to help humans understand the strange and wonderful beings that filled the galaxy. Day 1 had served in Earth's military for 20 years. He remembered the old days, before first contact. Back then, humans fought each other over land, resources, and old grudges. Then the Union found Earth. Everything changed. The Galactic Union was ancient. Hundreds of species working together, sharing knowledge, and keeping peace. They had rules. So many rules. Rules about war, about trade, about how to treat other species. Humans learned these rules quickly. They had to. The galaxy saw humans as dangerous. It was true, in a way. Humans were more violent than most species in the Union. They bred faster, adapted quicker, and fought harder than almost anyone else. But humanity wanted to belong. They wanted to prove they could be civilized. So they followed every rule. They held back their nature. They became the Union's peacekeepers, their diplomats, their bridge builders. "Captain," said the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from Ambassador Young-Soo Choi. It's marked urgent." Day 1 nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered. Ambassador Choi appeared, his face tight with worry. Choi had represented Earth at the Union Council for 15 years. He was a patient man, skilled at the slow dance of galactic politics. But today, that patience seemed to be cracking. "Captain Kim," Choi said, "I need you to change course immediately. Head for the Luminar system." Day 1 felt his stomach tighten. The Luminar were peaceful people, amphibious beings who spent their time studying philosophy and art. They had no military worth mentioning. They trusted the Union to protect them. "What's happening, Ambassador?" Choi's jaw clenched. "The Vexry Empire has entered Luminar space. They're not negotiating. They're not making demands. They're just killing." Hannah looked up from her station, her face pale. "Killing? The Vexry are insectoid, aren't they? Large population, hive-minded colonies?" "Yes," Choi said. "They've been expanding their territory for the past decade. We thought they were just aggressive colonizers. We were wrong." He paused, taking a deep breath. "They don't colonize, Dr. Park. They exterminate. Every species in their path. Complete extinction. Then they move their own population into the empty space." The bridge went silent. Day 1 felt cold anger building in his chest. He pushed it down, forced himself to stay calm. That was what humans did now. They stayed calm? "Has the Union authorized military intervention?" Day 1 asked. Troy's expression answered the question before his words did. "There will be a vote in 6 hours. But Captain, the preliminary counts aren't good. Most species want to avoid conflict with the Vexry. They're calling it an internal matter of sovereign expansion." "Sovereign expansion?" Hannah's voice shook with disbelief. "They're murdering an entire species." "I know," Troy said quietly. "I'm arguing for intervention. Earth is arguing for intervention. But we're 3 votes out of 50. He looked directly at Day 1. "Get there anyway. Record everything. Maybe if they see what's really happening, they'll change their minds." The transmission ended. Day 1 stood still for a moment, then turned to his crew. "Set course for Luminar space? Maximum speed." The journey took 18 hours. During that time, they received scattered transmissions from Luminar worlds. The messages came in fragments. Interrupted by static and interference, Hannah worked through the night, trying to clean up the audio. Day 1 watched her work, saw the tension in her shoulders growing with each message she decoded. "They're begging for help," she said finally. "The Vexry aren't just attacking military targets. They're hitting population centers, cities, schools." Her voice broke. "Hospitals. Day 1 closed his eyes. Keep recording. The Union needs to see this. They arrived at the outer luminar system to find 6 Vexary warships in orbit around the third planet. The planet's surface showed dozens of impact sites. Fires burned across entire continents. Scan for life signs, Day 1 ordered. The science officer worked quickly, then looked up with haunted eyes. Captain, the planet held 2 billion luminar yesterday. Now I'm reading less than 300 million. And falling, Hannah gasped. In one day. They killed that many in one day? They're thorough, the tactical officer said grimly. Those ships are dropping weapons systematically across every population grid. Nothing sophisticated, just raw destructive force applied with perfect efficiency. Day 1 opened a channel to the Vexary ships. This is Captain Day 1 Kim of the United Earthship Retribution. You are committing genocide against a peaceful species. The Galactic Union demands you cease this action immediately. The response came quickly. The Vexary voice sounded like clicking mandibles and grinding plates. The translator rendered it into flat, emotionless words. This territory now belongs to the Vexary Empire. Your presence is not required. Depart or be removed. We cannot depart while you murder innocent people. They are not people. They are obstacles. We remove obstacles. This is our nature. The channel closed. Day 1 stared at the screen, feeling something dark and old stirring inside him. This was why humans had rules now. This was why they held back. Because when humans stopped holding back, terrible things happened. Captain, Hannah said urgently. I'm picking up a tight beam transmission from the surface. It's from a shelter, underground. Put it on screen. The image was grainy, lit by emergency lights. A luminar adult stood in front of the camera. Behind her, Day 1 could see dozens of children. Their large eyes reflected the dim light, making them look even more afraid. Please, the luminar said. We are in Shelter Complex 743. The impacts are getting closer. We have children here. So many children. The Union promised to protect us. Please, we cannot fight. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. Please help us. The transmission cut off. Seconds later, the sensors registered a massive impact at the transmission's source coordinates. Life signs at that location? Day 1 asked quietly. The science officer checked, then shook his head. Hannah made a small sound halfway between a sob and a gasp. She turned to her station and started typing frantically. I'm pulling all the recordings we have, everything. The Union Council needs to see this. Hours passed. The vote came through. 47 species voted against intervention. Only 3 voted to help the Luminar. Earth, and 2 other younger species who remembered being weak once. Day 1 read the message from Admiral Bio-Ra Song at Earth Command. Return to base. We are not authorized to engage. Observe only. He stood on the bridge, watching another Vexary ship arrive in the system, watching it move into position over another luminar city. His hands gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. Captain? Hannah's voice was small. There's another transmission. From the different shelter. They're asking if help is coming. Day 1 looked at his crew. He saw his own rage reflected in their faces. But he also saw their discipline. Humanity had learned discipline. No, he said. Tell them we're sorry. Hannah worked at her station for several minutes. When she looked up again, tears streamed down her face. Captain, you need to see this. I managed to decrypt one of the Vexary internal communications. She put the video on the main screen. It showed the interior of a luminar shelter. Vexary soldiers moved through it methodically. The luminar inside didn't fight. They couldn't. They had no weapons, no training, no way to resist. The video showed Vexary soldiers separating the children from the adults. What happened next made Day 1's hands start to shake. He watched for 10 seconds before shutting it off. But it was too late. The image was burned into his mind. Into all their minds, the bridge was completely silent. Then Hannah started crying, really crying, her whole body shaking. The tactical officer turned away from his station. The communications officer just stared at the blank screen. Day One stood very still. He felt something inside him break. Something that had been carefully maintained for 43 years. A wall that humanity had built to keep the darkness contained. He walked slowly to the communications station. His voice came out calm, but everyone on the bridge could hear what lay beneath that calm. It was like hearing ice crack over deep, dark water. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," he said. "Priority Alpha. Tell them I need to speak with Admiral Song immediately." He paused. "Tell her it's about what happens next." President Ji-1 Lee sat in the emergency council chamber deep beneath Seoul. Around the table sat the leaders of Earth's major governments, military commanders, and senior advisors. They had been meeting for 6 hours. No one had left. No one had eaten. On the screen at the front of the room, the decrypted Vexery video played on repeat. Ji-1 had watched it 20 times now. Each time felt like swallowing broken glass. "Turn it off," said General Taeyang Park. His voice was rough. "We've all seen it. We know what they're doing." The screen went dark. The room stayed silent for a long moment. Ji-1 had served in the military before entering politics. She had seen war. She thought she understood what humans were capable of when they stopped being civilized. But this? The Vexery weren't acting from rage or fear or greed. They were simply efficient. They had calculated that complete extinction was the most effective way to claim territory. "The Union vote was final," said Foreign Minister Kang Hee-yoon. 47-3. "They're calling it an internal matter." "An internal matter," repeated Dr. Won-shik Bae. He ran Earth's Advanced Weapons Research Division. His laboratories had been working on theoretical projects for years. Projects that humanity had agreed never to deploy. They watched that video and called it an internal matter. "Some of them didn't watch," Ji-1 said quietly. The Valexian representative said viewing it would be too emotionally distressing. The Kurtani delegate said they trusted the report summary. Taeyang slammed his hand on the table. They didn't want to see. Because if they saw, they'd have to act. And acting would be inconvenient. One looked around the table. She saw the same expression on every face. Anger, yes. But also something deeper. A decision being made. A line being crossed. "We need to discuss our options," she said. "We have no options," said Admiral Bilra Song. She commanded Earth's space fleet. "The Union Charter is clear. We cannot engage in military action without Council authorization. If we do, we'll be expelled. Possibly sanctioned. Other species might even declare war on us. So we do nothing?" asked Lieutenant Sumin Kang. She was young for this meeting, but she represented Earth's Special Operations Forces. "We sit here and watch them finish the job." "I didn't say that." Biora leaned forward. "I said we'd be expelled from the Union. I didn't say we should stay in it." The room went very quiet. Ji-1 felt her heart beating faster. "You're talking about withdrawal. Complete separation from the Galactic Union." "I'm talking about choosing who we are," Biora said. "For 43 years, we've played by their rules. We've held back everything that makes us dangerous. We've tried to be the kind of species they could accept." She gestured at the dark screen. "And they used those rules to excuse genocide. To make it acceptable. To make it legal. If we withdraw," Kyung-hee said carefully, "we lose access to Union technology. Union trade routes. Union protection. What protection?" Taeyang's voice was hard. "The protection that lets species be exterminated as long as the proper forms are filed." "That protection?" Ji-1 stood up. She walked to the screen and put her hand against it. Behind that dark surface, the video waited. The images of luminar children dying while the galaxy looked away. "Dr. Bae," she said, "tell me about the contingency protocols." Won-shik straightened in his chair. Everyone turned to look at him. "Madam President, those projects were theoretical. We never intended to actually build." "I didn't ask what you intended. I asked what you have." Won-shik took a deep breath. We have kinetic bombardment platforms, tungsten rods that hit with nuclear force but leave no radiation. We have biological weapons tailored to 17 different species biology, including the Vexery. We have AI-controlled hunter drones that can track and eliminate targets with perfect efficiency. We have... He paused. We have a lot of ways to kill that the Union banned. And we built them anyway? We built them just in case. Because some of us worried that the Union's rules only worked when everyone followed them. One chick looked around the table. We worried about a day like today. Yuan returned to her seat. She looked at each person in the room. Here's what I need to know. If we do this, if we withdraw from the Union and intervene anyway, can we win? Biora pulled up tactical displays. The Vexery have a larger fleet than us, but they've never faced real resistance. Every species they've encountered either had no military or was too afraid to use it. She smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant smile. They've never fought humans before. We're one species against an empire, Kyung-hee warned. One very angry species, Taeyang said. And we've spent 4 decades learning every military technology in the Union. We've trained with every species. We know their tactics, their weaknesses, their limitations. He paused. And they've never seen what humans can do when we stop following the rules. Yuan closed her eyes. She thought about the Luminar in those shelters. She thought about the children. She thought about the Union Council voting to do nothing. She thought about every human military commander who had held back, stayed disciplined, followed the rules. If we do this, she said, we can't do it halfway. We can't just push the Vexery back and hope they learn a lesson. Species like them don't learn. They only understand one language. What language is that? Kyung-hee asked. Force, overwhelming, undeniable force. Ji-won opened her eyes. If we're going to do this, we need to break them so completely that no one ever tries something like this again. The room stayed silent. Everyone understood what she was really saying. We've become exactly what the galaxy fears, one chick said quietly. The violent, dangerous humans who don't follow civilized rules. Maybe, Ju-won said. Or maybe we become the species who does what's necessary when everyone else chooses to be blind. She stood again. I'm calling for a vote. Should Earth withdraw from the Galactic Union and intervene in the Luminar genocide by any means necessary? One by one, hands rose. When Ji-won counted them, every person in the room had voted yes. Then it's decided. She turned to Bo-ra. How long to mobilize the fleet? 72 hours for full deployment. We've kept the ships ready, just in case. Do it. I want every warship we have in Luminar space within a week. One looked at Taeyang. Start preparing ground forces? If we need to take Vexery territory, I want to be ready. And the contingency weapons? One chick asked that G1 met his eyes. Deploy everything. I want options. I want capabilities the Vexery can't imagine. I want them to realize they made a terrible mistake. She turned to the communications officer in the corner. Draft a message to the Galactic Union Council. Inform them that Earth is formally withdrawing from the Union, effective immediately. Tell them why. Make sure they understand that this is their failure, not ours. And a message to the Vexery? Biora asked. Send them a recording. Show them what happened to the Luminar. Then tell them this. Stop now. Leave Luminar space. Or face what we've kept contained for 43 years. Yuan's voice was cold. Give them one chance to choose peace. The next 3 days were chaos. Earth's entire military machine mobilized. Ships launched from orbital stations. Soldiers reported to bases. Factories switched to weapons production. The whole planet moved with a single purpose. G-1 barely slept. She spent her time coordinating with military commanders, speaking with the few Union species who supported Earth's decision, and watching reports from Luminar space. The news was worse each day. Another billion Luminar dead. Another planet stripped of life. The Vexery worked with mechanical efficiency, moving from world to world. On the third day, the Vexery response to Earth's message arrived. G1 watched it alone in her office. The Vexery commander spoke in that clicking, grinding voice. Humanity is weak. You follow rules. You value life. These are vulnerabilities, not strengths. We will finish our work in luminar space. Then perhaps we will visit your worlds and show you true efficiency. The transmission ended. G-1 sat very still. Then she opened a secure channel to Taeyang. The Vexery just threatened Earth. I saw the transmission, Taeyang said. His face was hard. So now we have justification for anything we do, self-defense. Yes, G1 felt something inside her settle into place. A terrible certainty. General, take the safeties off. All of them, Madam President? They want to see what humans are really capable of? Show them, no restraint. No mercy, no rules. She leaned forward. We tried civilization. They rejected it. So now we stop being civilized. Taeyang nodded slowly. Understood. I'll inform the fleet commanders. That night, G1 went to a secure vault deep beneath the capital. Taeyang met her there. Together, they opened the door marked Final Sanction Protocols, Human Warfare Unrestricted. Inside were files detailing every terrible thing humanity had ever imagined doing to an enemy. Methods of war that had been banned, both by Earth's own governments and by the Union. Tactics that crossed lines civilized. Species didn't cross. Taeyang picked up one file. Read it and set it down with shaking hands. Some of these, we shouldn't even know how to do this. But we do, Ji-won said quietly. Because deep down, we've always known that someday, being civilized wouldn't be enough. She selected several files and handed them to Taeyang. Authorize these. Get them to the fleet. Make sure every commander understands we're not just fighting the Vexery. We're sending a message to the entire galaxy. What message? Commander Hyunwoo Nam stood in the briefing room aboard the assault carrier. Righteous fury. Around him sat 50 squad leaders, each commanding units of Earth's best soldiers. The room was dead silent as they watched the tactical display. This is Vexery Colony World Designated Target 1, Hyunwoo said, highlighting a planet on the screen. Population, 7 million Vexery civilians, 200,000 military personnel. 3 primary cities. 12 industrial centers. Sergeant Yujin Kwan raised her hand. Commander, what are our rules of engagement? Hyunwoo looked at her. Yujin had served as a UN peacekeeper before the war. She was used to careful rules, proportional force, protecting civilians. That was the old way. There are no civilians, Hyunwoo said. The Vexery don't recognize the distinction. They didn't spare luminar civilians. We won't spare theirs. The room shifted uncomfortably. These were soldiers trained in Earth's modern military discipline, restrained, following international law. What Hyunwoo was describing was something else. Sir, said another squad leader, that's a war crime by Union standards. The Union called genocide an internal matter, Hyunwoo replied. Their standards don't apply anymore. Earth Command has authorized unrestricted warfare. That means we fight the way humans used to fight. Before we learn to hold back. He changed the display. It showed a Vexery colony with detailed weak points marked. Captain Dong Ha-shin will deliver the first strike with his stealth frigate. His team will deploy biological weapons key to Vexery physiology. The disease will take 12 hours to show symptoms. 24 hours to become fatal. It spreads through contact. That's a plague weapon, someone whispered. Yes, Hyunwoo said. After the plague starts spreading, we'll broadcast footage to the other Vexery worlds. They'll know what's coming. Officer Min SEOO has prepared psychological warfare packages. We want them afraid. We want them to feel what the Luminar felt. Yujin stood up. Her face was pale but determined. Commander, I understand we're angry. I understand what they did. But if we do this, we become monsters too. Hyunwoo had expected this. He prepared for it. He walked over to a console and pulled up a video. The same one G1 had watched? The one showing Vexery soldiers in the Luminar shelter. Watch this again, he said quietly. All of you. Watch what they did to children who couldn't fight back. Children who begged for mercy in a language the Vexari couldn't even understand. The room watched in silence. Some looked away. Some closed their eyes. But they all knew what the video showed. We're not becoming monsters, Hyan-Wu said. We're becoming the thing that stops monsters. And sometimes, to stop a monster, you have to be more terrible than they are. He let that sink in. Then he continued the briefing. Ground teams will deploy after the plague has reduced resistance. Your job is to document everything. Command wants the galaxy to see this. They want everyone to understand what happens when you ignore genocide. The mission launched 6 hours later. Dong Ashin piloted his stealth frigate into Vexari space, slipping past their sensors. His ship carried weapons humanity had designed but never used. Until now. Target acquired, Dongha reported. Beginning deployment. The biological weapon released silently into the atmosphere, invisible, odorless, efficient, within hours. It would spread through the entire colony. The Vexari wouldn't even know they were infected until it was too late. Deployment complete, Dongha said. Returning to the fleet. Han-Wu watched the planet below. Somewhere down there, 7 million Vexari were going about their lives. In 12 hours, they would start feeling sick. In 24 hours, most of them would be dead. He felt nothing. That scared him more than anything. Sir, said the communications officer, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Union. They're demanding we cease military operations immediately. Ignore it, Hyan-Wu said. We're not in the Union anymore. They don't give us orders? 12 hours passed. Reports started coming in from the Vexari colony. Hospitals were filling up. The Vexari medics didn't understand what was happening. The disease spread too fast. Killed too efficiently. Min SEO began broadcasting psychological warfare messages to other Vexari worlds. This is humanity. We gave you a chance to stop. You threatened us instead. Now you'll understand what it means to be defenseless. What it means to watch your people die and know that no help is coming. The messages included footage from the colony. Vexari stumbling in the streets. Their medical facilities overwhelmed. Their leaders begging for assistance that wouldn't arrive. 20-4 hours after deployment. The colony's population had dropped by 70%. The survivors were too sick to resist. Send in the ground teams, Hyan-Wu ordered. Yujin led her squad down to the planet's surface. They wore protective gear against the biological weapon. As they moved through the empty streets, Yujin tried not to look at the bodies, but she had to look. That was part of the orders. Document everything. Her helmet camera recorded Vexari homes with families inside, all dead from the plague. It recorded medical centers where doctors had died trying to save patients. It recorded schools where young Vexari had collapsed at their learning stations. This is wrong, one of her soldiers said over the comm. They're dead. We won. Why do we have to see this? Because Command wants the galaxy to see it, Yujin replied. Her voice sounded hollow even to herself. They want everyone to know exactly what we did. The ground teams planted Earth's flag on the colony. Then they moved to the industrial centers and planted demolition charges. When they left, those charges would destroy everything the Vexari had built. Back on the ship, Han-Wu compiled the recordings. He added them to a package that would be broadcast across the galaxy. The message was simple. This is what happens. This is what you forced us to become. The Galactic Union response was immediate. Dozens of species condemned humanity. They called the colony attack a war crime. They demanded Earth-based justice. Captain Eunji Lim, the fleet's tactical officer, read the messages aloud to Hyan-Wu. The Torellians are calling us butchers. The Valexians say we violated every principle of civilized warfare. The Cortani are proposing sanctions. Where were they when the Luminar died? Han-Wu asked quietly. Eunji didn't answer. She didn't need to. 3 Vexari warships approached Earth's fleet, attempting to mount a defense. They were destroyed within minutes. Human weapons technology had advanced far beyond what the Vexari expected. The battle wasn't a battle at all. It was an execution. Target their life support systems, Yunji ordered. Let them suffocate slowly. I want the other Vexery ships to hear them die. The communications officer looked sick but followed orders. The dying Vexery crew's final moments were broadcast on open channels. Their clicking, grinding screams filled the void. On the second Vexery colony world, Hyunwoo changed tactics. No biological weapons this time. Instead, they deployed hunter drones, AI-controlled machines designed for one purpose: efficient killing. The drones swept through the colony in waves. They were fast, precise, and completely without mercy. They identified targets and eliminated them with mechanical efficiency. The Vexery fought back, but fighting autonomous machines was different from fighting living soldiers. The drones felt no fear, no hesitation, no remorse. Yujin watched the drone footage from orbit. The machines moved through Vexery streets like a tide, leaving nothing alive behind them. It was like watching the Vexery's own tactics turned against them. Is this justice? She asked Hyunwoo. Or is this revenge? Does it matter? He replied. The Luminar are still dead either way. At least now the Vexery understand what they took from the galaxy. But Yujin could see the cost in her commander's eyes, in her fellow soldiers' faces, in her own reflection. They were winning, but they were losing something too. Something important. The third colony received a different message. Hyunwoo broadcasted a warning: evacuate. You have 48 hours. After that, we destroy the planet. It wasn't mercy. It was calculated cruelty. The Vexery scrambled to evacuate, but they didn't have enough ships. Millions couldn't escape. They spent their final hours knowing exactly when they would die. When the deadline arrived, Earth's fleet deployed kinetic bombardment weapons. Tungsten rods fell from orbit, hitting with the force of nuclear weapons. The colony world surface turned to glass. The Galactic Union sent more messages. More condemnations. Some species threatened military action against humanity. Earth's response came from Ambassador Young-Soo Choi, who had remained to speak to the Union one final time. He stood before the council chamber, looking at the species who had voted against helping the Luminar. You call us monsters, Choi said. You say we've abandoned civilization. You're right. We have. Do you know why? He played the video of the Luminar shelter. Made them watch it. Because civilization only works when everyone chooses it. You sat in these chambers and voted to let genocide happen because stopping it would be inconvenient. You taught us that your rules only apply when they're convenient. He looked around the chamber. We tried your way. We followed your rules. We held back everything that makes us dangerous. And you used that restraint against the defenseless. So now we're showing you what happens when humans stop being civilized. When we stop holding back. When we stop following rules that only protect the guilty. Colonel Jae-hyun Cho walked through the ruins of what had been a Vexery city. His boots crunched on debris. Around him, his soldiers moved through the wreckage, checking for survivors. They found very few. 6 Vexery worlds had fallen to Earth's fleet. 40 billion Vexery reduced to 20 billion in 3 weeks. The numbers were almost too large to comprehend. Almost. Colonel, called out one of his soldiers. We found something. Jae-hyun followed the soldier to a partially collapsed structure. Inside, they found a Vexery data center, still partially functional. The screens showed communications between Vexery worlds. Messages of panic. Desperate pleas for help. Exactly like the Luminar messages 3 weeks ago. Should we destroy it, sir? The soldier asked. No, Jae-hyun said. Download everything? Command will want to see how they're reacting. The files told a story. The Vexery Empire was fracturing. Their leadership couldn't understand what was happening. They had conquered 12 species before the Luminar. None had fought back effectively. The Vexery had developed tactics for crushing resistance, but they had never faced an enemy that fought the way humans fought. One message stood out. A Vexery military commander writing to his government. The humans don't fight for territory. They don't fight for resources. They fight to erase us. Every tactic we use, they counter with something worse. They're not trying to defeat us. They're trying to make us extinct. Jaehyun read it twice. The Vexery commander had finally understood. This wasn't a war. It was a demonstration. Humanity was showing the galaxy what total war looked like. Back on the Retribution. Day 1 received a transmission from Admiral Beora Song. Her face showed the exhaustion they all felt. Captain, we've received intelligence from one of our scout ships. The Vexery have breeding worlds planets dedicated entirely to their population growth. 3 worlds, each holding approximately 4 billion larvae in various stages of development. Daehyun felt his stomach turn. He knew what was coming. Earth Command wants them destroyed, the Ra continued. All 3 worlds. They say if we leave the larvae alive, the Vexery will rebuild in a generation. They're children, Daehyun said quietly. Not soldiers. Not leaders, just ... children, I know. The Ora's voice was heavy. But Command's position is clear. The Vexery showed no mercy to Luminar children. They made extinction their policy. We're applying that same policy to them. Admiral, I don't know if I can give that order. You don't have to. Colonel Jaehyun Cho has already been assigned the mission. I'm telling you because your ship will provide support. The Ora paused. Daehyun, I know what we're becoming. I see it every day. But if we don't finish this, if we let the Vexery survive and rebuild, they'll do it again. To someone else? Maybe to us? The transmission ended. Daehyun sat in his command chair, feeling old. He had been a soldier for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. For being part of something so absolute. So final. Dr. Hannah Park found him there an hour later. She looked as tired as he felt. I've been compiling a record, she said. Everything we've done. Every action. Every decision. Someone needs to document this. For history. You think history will judge us kindly? Daehyun asked. No, Hannah said honestly. But maybe history needs to know that we didn't do this easily. That it cost us something. She sat down. I've been documenting the psychological reports too. From our soldiers. Do you know what I'm seeing? Daehyun shook his head. Trauma. But not the kind you'd expect. They're not traumatized by what they're doing. They're traumatized by how easy it's becoming. How normal it feels to destroy entire populations. That scares them more than anything. Field medic Sang Wuhan was documenting this too in his own way. Every day, he wrote reports from the medical camps where soldiers came for treatment. Not for physical wounds, those were rare in a war fought mostly from orbit. But for the wounds that didn't show. His latest report read, Day 21. 3 more soldiers requested psychiatric evaluation. Common symptoms: emotional numbness, difficulty feeling empathy, nightmares about efficiency. One soldier told me he calculated how many Vexery died per second during the last orbital strike. He did it automatically, like solving a math problem. He's terrified of how natural it felt. Sang Woo added his own notes. We're becoming efficient at extinction. We're getting good at it. Too good. I fear what we're learning about ourselves. The mission to the breeding worlds launched 3 days later. Jaehyun led 3 battalions of ground forces. Their orders were clear: verify that the breeding facilities contained only larvae, then eliminate them. The first world was covered in massive dome structures. Inside each dome, billions of Vexery larvae grew in carefully controlled environments. Jaehyun's team moved through the facility, their cameras recording everything. Confirmed, reported one squad leader. No adult Vexery present. Only larvae and automated systems. Jaehyun stood in one of the domes, looking at the rows of larvae. They were barely recognizable as Vexery. Just small, undeveloped forms. In a few years, they would have become adults. They would have lived lives, made choices, perhaps even questioned their empire's policies. Now they would just die. Sir, said his second-in-command. We're ready to deploy the weapons. Waiting on your order. Jaehyun closed his eyes. He thought about the Luminar children in the shelter. About the video that had started all this. about the choice between being the good guy and being effective. Do it, he said. The weapons deployed were designed for this specific purpose. Chemical agents that would shut down the larvae's biological functions. Quick, painless, efficient, within hours. 4 billion potential Vexari ceased to exist. Jae-hyun watched it happen. Forced himself to watch. He felt he owed them that much, to at least witness what he had ordered. Back on his ship, he wrote a message to his family on Earth. He wouldn't send it yet. Maybe never. But he needed to write it. I've done something today that I can never undo. I've ended billions of lives before they could begin. Command says it was necessary. Maybe it was. Maybe the Vexari would have grown up to be just like their parents. Maybe they would have killed more innocent species. Or maybe some of them would have been different. Would have changed. I'll never know. That's what I have to live with. The Galactic Union's response to the breeding world attacks was immediate and fierce. 17 species demanded Earth-face war crimes tribunals. Some threatened direct military action. Ambassador Mir-Rae Yoon, who had taken Choi's place as humanity's voice to the galaxy, stood before the council once more. You're outraged, she said. You're horrified. You call us monsters for destroying Vexari children. She paused. Where was this outrage 3 weeks ago? When Luminar children died, you called it an internal matter. When humans respond the same way, suddenly you have moral standards. This is different, protested the Valexian delegate. You're committing premeditated genocide. Yes, Mir-Rae said calmly. We're doing exactly what the Vexari did. But with one difference, we asked you to stop them first. We begged you to intervene. You refused. So now we're showing you what intervention looks like when it comes too late. When the only option left is to make sure it never happens again. You've become the very thing you claim to oppose, said the Kartani representative. No, Mir-Rae replied. We've become the thing that stops what we oppose. There's a difference. The Vexari chose genocide as policy. We chose genocide as a last resort. After exhausting every alternative. After watching you refuse every alternative. She pulled up data on the screen. Do you know how many species the Vexari have completely erased? 12. 12 entire species are gone from the galaxy because you all decided that was acceptable. That it was more important to maintain peace than to stop mass murder. Well, we're maintaining peace now. A permanent peace where the Vexari will never threaten anyone again. 3 species left the chamber in protest. But 4 species remained, and when Mir-Rae finished speaking, they approached her privately. Our governments didn't authorize us to say this, one delegate whispered. But some of us are glad you did what we couldn't, what we were too afraid to do. Mir-Rae felt no satisfaction from this. Just exhaustion. On the flagship, Captain Yoonji Lim ran the calculations again. At the current rate of Vexari casualties, the species would be reduced to critical population levels in 12 days. Below that threshold, they couldn't recover. Genetic diversity would be too limited. Their empire would collapse not from military defeat, but from demographic impossibility. She reported this to command. The response came quickly. Maintain current operations. Proceed to the Vexari homeworld. The final world. The heart of the Vexari Empire. 3 billion Vexari remaining, concentrated on their original planet, Earth's fleet assembled in orbit around it. 200 ships, carrying the weight of everything they'd done over the past 3 weeks. Daehyun broadcast a message to the surface. This is Captain Day 1 Kim of Earth. We are prepared to destroy this planet and everyone on it. But we're offering terms. Surrender unconditionally. Accept permanent restrictions. Or die. You have 24 hours to decide. The Vexari Empress responded within an hour. Her message was defiant. We will never surrender to a species of primitives. We are Vexari. We are eternal. You cannot defeat us. Eunji looked at Daehyun. She doesn't understand yet. The war had been over for 3 weeks. Earth's fleet remained in orbit around the Vexari homeworld, a permanent reminder of what had happened. Below, 3 billion Vexari tried to rebuild their lives under human supervision. Captain Day One Kim stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the planet below. He felt older than his years. The war had aged everyone. "Captain," said the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's from a group of surviving Luminar refugees. They want to speak with you." Day One nodded. He had been expecting this. "Put them through." The screen showed a Luminar elder, one of the 200,000 who had survived. Her large eyes held an expression Day One couldn't quite read. "Captain Kim," she said in her gentle, musical voice, "we wanted to thank you. You avenged our people. You made sure the Vexery will never hurt anyone again." "You're welcome," Day One said, though the words felt wrong in his mouth. The Luminar was quiet for a moment. "We also wanted to tell you something else. We are grateful, but we are also frightened. Of you, of what you did, of what you became to save us." Day One had no response to that. What could he say? That it was necessary? That they had no choice? All those things were true, but they didn't make the fear unjustified. "We understand," he finally said. "You should be frightened. We frightened ourselves." Back on Earth, President Ji-won Lee stood before a memorial that had been built in the capital. It listed every name all the Luminar who had died in the genocide. Billions of names carved into black stone. Next to it, they were building a second memorial. This one would list the Vexery dead. 40 billion names. It would take years to complete. "Some people think we shouldn't build it," said Admiral Bill Raw-song, joining Ji-won at the site. "They say the Vexery don't deserve to be remembered." "Everyone deserves to be remembered," Ji-won said quietly. "Even the ones we killed. Especially the ones we killed. If we forget what we did, we might do it again." Dr. Hannah Park had compiled her final report. It was thousands of pages long, documenting every action humanity had taken during the war. Every weapon used. Every casualty. Every decision. She titled it, "The Cost of Inaction: How the Galaxy Created the Monster It Feared." The report included psychological evaluations of the soldiers who had fought. The results were troubling. Most showed symptoms of trauma, but not in the expected ways. They weren't haunted by what they'd seen. They were haunted by how easily they'd done it. "We discovered something about ourselves," one soldier's evaluation read. "When we stop holding back, when we remove all the rules we've built, we're terrifyingly effective at violence. It's like we'd been training for this our whole history. Every war we ever fought prepared us for this one. And that scares me more than anything the Vexery ever did." The Galactic Union had reorganized in humanity's absence. They had passed new laws. Now, genocide was grounds for immediate military intervention. No votes needed. No debates. Just action. Ambassador Mireille Yoon attended a special session where these laws were announced. The Valexian delegate who had once called the Luminar genocide an internal matter now praised the new legislation. Narration stood up. "These are good laws. They will save lives, but they come too late for the Luminar. And they only exist because humanity showed you what happens when inaction goes unpunished." "We learn from our mistakes," the delegate said defensively. "No," Mireille replied. "You learn from our response to your mistakes. There's a difference." She looked around the chamber. "Every species in this room shares responsibility for what happened. You created the conditions that forced humanity to do what we did. Remember that. The blood on our hands is on yours too." She left the chamber. Earth wouldn't be rejoining the Union, not now. Maybe not ever. The galaxy needed to remember that humans were capable of terrible things. It kept everyone more careful. Colonel Jae-hyun Cho visited one of the breeding worlds 3 months after the war ended. The domes still stood, but they were empty now. Monuments had been placed outside each one. He read the inscription, "Here died 4 billion futures. May their deaths remind us that there are no innocent wars." His hands shook as he read it. He had given the order. He lived with it every day. "Do you regret it?" asked one of his soldiers who had accompanied him. Jae-hyun thought for a long time before answering. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the galaxy put us in a position where we had to choose between being good and being effective. But do I regret the choice itself? No, because if I regret it, that means I'd choose differently. And if I chose differently, the Vexery would still be out there, doing to others what they did to the Luminar. So you'd do it again? If I had to? Yes, but I pray to whatever exists that I never have to. Sergeant Eugene Kwan had left the military after the war. She couldn't continue. Not after what she'd seen. What she'd done. She now worked with the Luminar refugees, helping them rebuild their culture. One day, a young Luminar child asked her, "Why did the Vexery hate us?" Eugen had to think about how to answer. They didn't hate you. That's what made it worse. They just saw you as being in the way. You were obstacles to their expansion. Nothing personal. And why did humans help us? That was harder to answer. Because we couldn't stand by and watch. Because we remembered what it was like to be helpless once. Because... She paused. Because someone had to. The child considered this. But you killed so many. More than the Vexery killed. I know, Eugen said quietly. We became monsters to stop monsters. Sometimes that's how it works. The child looked up at her with those large, innocent eyes. Are you still monsters? Eugen didn't have an answer. Dr. Sang-Woo Han published his medical report 6 months after the war. They became required reading for military personnel across Earth. The key finding was simple, but profound. Humans are capable of terrible efficiency and violence. This capability doesn't make us evil, but it does make us dangerous. We must never forget what we learned about ourselves. One passage stood out. During the war, I treated hundreds of soldiers for psychological issues. Not one of them regretted stopping the Vexery. But every single one struggled with how easily they'd adapted to total war. They discovered that the line between civilization and savagery is thinner than we'd like to believe. It's not a wall. It's a choice we make every day. General Taeyang Park retired after the war. In his final address to the military, he said something that would be remembered for generations. We proved we could be monsters. We showed the galaxy what humans are capable of when we remove all restraints. That was necessary once. But if it's ever necessary again, it means we've failed. Our job now is to make sure the galaxy never forgets what we did. Not because we're proud of it, but because the memory might prevent it from happening again. President Ji-Won Lee served one more term before stepping down. In her farewell address, she spoke directly to the people of Earth. I ordered actions that resulted in 40 billion deaths. I authorized weapons that we'd promised never to use. I told our soldiers to abandon every rule we'd built to constrain human violence. I did this because the alternative was allowing genocide to go unanswered. History will judge whether I was right. But I want you all to understand something. The choice I made should never have been necessary. The galaxy forced that choice through inaction. Remember that. When someone asks you to look away from evil because fighting it would be inconvenient, remember the Luminar. Remember what looking away costs? The Vexery homeworld remained under human supervision. A generation grew up knowing only their planet, unable to reach the stars. Human observers watched them carefully. Looking for any sign of their old expansionist ideas, some Vexery accepted their new reality. Others resented it. But all of them understood they had threatened humanity once. They would never get a second chance. A new culture developed among the Vexery youth. They studied what their empire had done. They learned about the 12 species erased before the Luminar. They read accounts of human response. And some of them began teaching that their empire's greatest mistake wasn't military failure. It was moral failure. One young Vexery scholar wrote, "We believed extinction was just a tool, an efficient solution to competition. We were wrong. Extinction is a line that, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. Humanity taught us that lesson with our own blood. We should have learned it from the Luminar's blood instead." 10 years after the war, Earth finally sent a new ambassador to the Galactic Union, not to rejoin but to observe. The ambassador was Hien Wu Nam, the commander who had led the first strikes against the Vex Ari Dot in his first address. He was asked why Earth chose him to represent them. Because I have blood on my hands, Hien Wu said simply. 40 billion dead because of orders I helped carry out. Earth wants you to remember what we did, what you forced us to do, so they sent someone who can't let you forget. He paused, looking around the chamber. I'm here to make sure that if genocide ever threatens to happen again, you don't look away. You don't call it an internal matter. You don't hide behind rules and procedures while innocent people die. Because if you do, Earth will respond the same way we did before. And none of us want that. The chamber was silent. The memorial on Earth listing all the Vexari dead was completed after 12 years. It stood next to the Luminar Memorial. On days when the sun was right,